All right. This build works off of a Nature's Fury passive, which a lot of people have been working into since its buff. I believe it got a buff from 20% to 30%. And so I wanted to seek out a build that's going to work for the common casual. Common casual is not going to have uniques. I do not have uniques. Of course, you want to have the uniques for this build, but we'll talk about those at a different time because right now we're going to focus on what the build looks like for you. Will this build likely change a point or two here or there? Of course, I'm still working on this build, but is this build workable? Yes, I'm using it. I was able to use it in a nightmare dungeon and clear it just fine. Of course, affixes are more difficult, survivability is more difficult, but having a build that's going to work for you into season 1 right off the get is going to be really essential. So this build works off of Stormstrike. However, with uniques, you're going to be using Claw, which is going to basically grant you Stormstrike. So you'll have 2 basic skills with this in the end of this. But we're going to start out with Stormstrike, followed up by Enhanced Stormstrike, which is going to give us Immobilization, and then followed by Vulnerability. Really essential to any build in Diablo 4 right now is going to be Vulnerability. So starting it out with Vulnerability is going to be really key. So now that we have Vulnerability already keyed into the build, we're going to follow it up with really Landslide. Landslide is the focus of our second tree, our core skills tree, but we're not even casting Landslide. As you can see in my build, I don't have Landslide in my tree. Like I don't have it in my actual set. I actually don't have it in my set right now. And the reason behind that is because using my trample with the landslide aspect, I'm going to be able to essentially activate landslides to happen when I trample. That's why I don't have it on my trees whatsoever. So this build uses no spirit spending. Going further into the tree, in the core skills tree, Heart of the Wild, we're really just grabbing that so we can get core skills cost 9% more spirit, but deal 50% more damage. Like I said, we're not spending any spirit in this build. So that means 15% damage with 0 cost to us. It's free damage for us. Moving further into the build, we're going to be using Earthen Bulwark. We're going to maximize basically the amount of points we can put into Landslide as well as Earthen Bulwark. And the reason why I do it with Earthen Bulwark is because it gives you more damage in the breaking of the barrier. Why I say that is because not the unstoppable portion, but an innate Earthen Bulwark, it explodes like shrapnel and will explode outward, causing 1726 damage to surrounding enemies. This damage is increased by barrier bonuses. So what is the first stat you're gonna stack? Vulnerable damage. Second, it's going to be barrier generation and any sort of barrier bonuses. Anything that can increase the amount of barrier you get. Basically, the higher your barrier, your shield is, the harder it'll explode. The next part is going to be getting Vigilance. Vigilance, basically damage reduction when using a defensive skill. Since we have constantly having Earthen Bulwark up, when it's down, we have damage reduction. So it's basically that downtime is damage reduction. We're not going to grab anything in companion skills. I did try out using Poison Creeper. It wasn't bad. It's not a bad alternative to Rabies, but we do want a werewolf skill. And since we're not going to be using Claw, Rabies is that close second that we can have. So when we go into this third tree, or this fourth tree rather, in our Wrath skills, we're grabbing a ton here. We're grabbing Hurricane, and we're mainly grabbing Hurricane for the slow, and we're also grabbing the damage reduction that we get from enemies. We're grabbing Trample, and the reason why we're grabbing Trample, and I grab Enhanced Trample for the bonus damage. I haven't confirmed. A few places told me that the damage that we get from the damage bonus we get from Trample, since it's 150% bonus damage, it also contributes to the landslides that we're doing because the landslides are part of the Trample. I'm not 100% on this. I haven't tested the difference with or without to see if it works that way, but I personally do grab it. If you don't grab it, that's fine. You could easily put that skill point into, for me, it would probably be more Fortify of some sort, maybe going further even into actually maybe not Trample, but going into maybe Natural Disaster of some sort for more damage, or Heightened Senses for more damage reduction against elites. So I grab Hurricane, I grab all of my Earth skills. Actually, I'd probably grab Stone Guard, finish that out, basically when you have Fortify. So we're going to maximize our Earth skills because Trample is an Earth skill with the landslides, as well as using landslide. It's going to be our major earth skill, as well as earth and bulwark. Earth and bulwark and landslide are going to be our main damage dealers, so we want as much earth damage as possible, but we are still going to be getting crits from storm skill damages because of our passive, and we'll talk about that in a second. Next, we'll be using rabies for poison administration. Basically, we just want to get poison on our enemies. It's not necessarily important how much damage we do. We're not statting into poison, but we are grabbing slow. So all poison enemies are now slowed. So anything that affects with crowd control or slowing is going to be it's going to add to that. And then on top of that, we're going to get 30% critical strike damage on poisoned enemies. So having those two things consecutively is going to basically mean anytime we poison, we have 30% critical strike damage increase. I also grabbed 1 point into werewolf skills, deal 8% of their base damage as poisoning damage, for having the force over 4 seconds. Increasing the ranks of this does increase your damage, but I don't really want damage. I just want that extra dot of poison. So I get a poison dot over 6 seconds from rabies. I get a poison dot with toxic claws. So I only grabbed 1 point personally. The last set that we're going to have in here is going to be basically our ultimate skills. I grabbed petrify and only 1 point into the durations. I could see you not grabbing that and maybe putting an extra point into heightened senses or something else for defensives, or even something like natural disaster if you would like. But you could also do Cataclysm. Cataclysm is definitely a workable one. I just prefer Petrify because Petrify gives you 30% increased critical strike damage to enemies. So having that extra critical strike damage on top of the ultimate is really good. Whereas Cataclysm does do a lot of damage, but it doesn't really do anything besides the damage it deals. You can increase the duration, you can increase vulnerable chance, so it's not a bad one. What we really want from this is we really want it to proc from our Nature's Fury. I grabbed Defiance mainly so I can get into my Resonance tree, and basically this gives me 6% increased damage and triples if an Earth skill matches or is followed by a Storm skill, vice versa. So I grabbed that one because it's going to give me the most out of it, but you can easily do something like Natural Disaster. The reason why I don't grab Natural Disaster is because it requires a vulnerability or a stun, immobilize, or knockback. It's not bad because we do those things in our build, but it's situational is why I don't grab it. I personally grab Quick Shift, but we're going to be shape-shifting using Rabies as well as Trample into Werewolf as well as Werebear. So I grab max amount of those things so I can get max damage as well as Natural Fortitude so I can get 4% fortification every time I shapeshift. So that to me is really, I don't want to say the only fortify you need, but it's kind of the essential one. The last tree, of course, is Nature's Fury, and this is going to bring all of this together. Nature's Fury is basically, if you cast an Earth skill, it can trigger a Storm skill and vice versa. So what does that look like? If I cast something like Petrify, it can cast a free Cataclysm. If I had points in Cataclysm, or even if my armor gave me like points into a Cataclysm, I would get those extra points and that extra damage. I get a free cast of that ability, even though I have no points in it. When I cast something like Landslide, I can get free tornadoes. I can get free lightning storms. So basically, anytime I cast an Earth skill, I can get a free lightning skill and vice versa. So like having these abilities and speccing in mainly into earth damage, because there's tons of things in this build that is going to increase your earth damage, and you can do the same thing with lightning, but really it ends up being a lot more damage through earth skills. It ends up being a lot of compounding damage. I grab poisons for extra critical strike damage, but basically I want to put as many effects on somebody as possible. The stars ever so align, and my damage ends up multiplying. It's very fast paced with a lot of cooldown reduction, which is going to be your other stat you're going to focus on. It's on top of vulnerable damage as well as barrier generation. With these three things together, you're going to have a build that really can just tack on thousands, 10Ks, and like it starts multiplying the more you add and the more you kind of start comboing your abilities. I'm using a staff. I find that staffs work best with this. I think two-handed axes can work with it well additionally, but really there's nothing in this that's necessarily special right now. I have earth skills slow because I use earth skills a lot. I have basic skills grant damage reduction just for damage reduction. You can grab werewolf damage reduction too. I have skills deal up to 13% increased damage based on your primary resource. It's a terrible roll, but I have max primary resource, so that's always going to be a good idea to have that. I have Nature's Fury. Key passive triggers a free skill. When it does that, your non-ultimate cooldowns of the opposite type are reduced. So basically, more cooldown reduction. Damage reduction while shapeshifted into a werewolf. There it is, 13%. Once again, terrible roll. Werewolf skills function as storm skills. Werebear skills function as earth skills for the Nature's Fury passage. Basically, it's doing what it is already naturally, but basically I can make sure that anything that's a werewolf skill that I have, whether it's right now it's rabies or claw, or in the other case it's trample, I'm making sure that they're getting the benefits from my earth skill benefits as well as the benefits from my lightning skill stats as well. Lucky hit, 19% to deal lightning damage, overload for 3 seconds, cause any direct damage. This is just flat out damage. It's not special whatsoever. This is going to be the important one. Trample now summons 6 landslide pillars of the earth to the duration that deals 77% normal damage. Of course, another bad roll. So if the thing I want to stress is that if my build is doing well and my rolls are bad and I don't have the uniques, then imagine it with having much more stats, much better gear. Basically, I had a lot of spare gear in my chest. I equipped all this gear. I tried this build. It works. So if you are on the edge of maybe switching from Pulverize or another build that Druid has, then this build is going to be fantastic for you come season 1, because there are so many things that are coming to Druid to benefit this build and already have. So that's what I recommend. I hope you like the build. If you're in the YouTube comments and you have any questions or additions to this build that I didn't add, maybe something that I didn't see. Right now, the thing that I'm struggling with the most is probably defensives, which is what a lot of people are dealing with right now because there were so many nerfs to defensives. I can definitely see that happening. I could easily see myself removing Prime Petrify, maybe adding more into Heightened Senses. I could definitely see adding more into maybe even putting more into Natural Trample to get base life fortify. That's definitely possible. And of course, like I said, the goal is to switch this to Claw once you get the uniques. There are 2 uniques that you can get. That's Tempest Roar and Staff of Crone. Staff of Crone basically makes your Claw also cast a Storm Strike. So you'll have 2 basic skills. And your Tempest Roar, I believe, works with your lightning skills. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but those 2, the staff more than the helmets are going to be the important uniques. But I made this build because you may be coming into season 1 not having any of these uniques, just like me. So I hope this build helps you out. I hope it works for you going into season 1. And of course, if you have any recommendations, please let me know. I would love to know. I want to improve this build and make it better for everybody else, because I definitely want to make builds that work for other people, and that's the way I've always made my builds. So if you liked it, subscribe to the page, head to the Twitch while we're live, because I basically was working this entire build, the entire stream, and I'm sure I made people miserable. So join us, ask any questions you have, make any recommendations, any criticisms you have as well. I'd love to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, done. YouTube done. You only died 30 times. Listen, it was... I live for a good time, not a long time. What a spiel. Ugh.